With this portion, we're back to symbols again, and this time in the U.S. Capitol. It's with this sort of topic that Fairley tends to be at his worst, and his record doesn't improve this time. We've already explained in a prior chapter that an obelisk isn't a phallus, which also means it isn't a male principle as Fairley claims. How about the idea of a dome as a female principle or womb? That's really no less creative or contrived. Domes have been variously thought to symbolize the sky itself, or reaching towards the heavens, or any number of other things depending on their context. The inspiration for the Capitol dome was a craze at the time of its design for Greek and Roman styles of architecture. But the idea of domes as sexual symbols is purely imagination at work. That also means there's no occultism at work here in their design. However, one of Fairley's claims does raise a question. Fairley says that you can find the pairing of an obelisk and a dome at the Vatican, in Washington, in Paris, and in many other cities. Really? How many cities exactly? He doesn't say, nor does he say how close they have to be counted as a pairing. We've already discussed the statue on top of the Capitol dome, which is Freedom, not Reason, or Ashira. Fairley adds that she faces east, and seems to make much of it. He shouldn't. The official explanation by the U.S. government is as follows. Is there any reason to doubt this? No, not unless you're starting with the notion of a conspiracy. And while we're at it, let's also look at the official description of the statue. Now, if you compare this to a picture of an idol of Ashira, there's a lot of it that's missing. In particular, Freedom isn't showing off her attributes the way Ashira normally does, if you catch my drift. Now, I know what Fairley will say to this because he already has. This is a dark hidden meaning not meant for public consumption. But like I also said before, you can play that game with anything if you're already convinced there's a conspiracy. It's just a huge case of begging the question, and it can and has been turned around on Christianity and on the Bible as well. Next is a whole set of claims made about Constantino Brumidi, the man who painted the scene on the inside of the Capitol dome. How much of what Fairley says is correct? Well, it's true Brumidi worked for the Vatican, but Fairley goes off the beam when he refers to an 1848 attempt by Masons to overthrow the Pope, and Brumidi being a chief conspirator and being shipped off to the U.S. The official U.S. government account of Brumidi says the following. We should add that the Pope wasn't exactly the target of the action in 1848. The initial targets were the Austrian oppressors of some of the northern Italian states, which at the time were not unified as the nation we now call Italy. From there, nationalist fervor spread into other parts of Italy and caused even more trouble. Under those circumstances, the Pope, Pius IX, did leave town for a bit. But Brumidi as a chief conspirator? No. He was charged with grand larceny, aggravated assault, and kidnapping against churches, convents, and monasteries of Rome, but not of trying to overthrow the Pope, who wasn't even targeted. Brumidi also wasn't shipped off to the U.S. He went on his own and was the first to make the offer to go there. What about the claim that Brumidi worked for occult societies in the U.S.? The official site refers to a lot of government projects, as well as private portraits and domestic commissions, and work for churches, but it doesn't mention occult societies. Now let's discuss the painting on the inside of the dome, which is titled the Apotheosis. There's not much needs to be said here again, because it's just Fairley once more reading too much into what's presented. There's no need to rewrite it so that Freedom or Columbia is Ashira, or to think George Washington is being deified. Because although the word apotheosis does mean that someone is deified in theological context, in artistic context it means, as an official government website puts it, the glorification of a person as an ideal. Let's next fact-check a claim from Fairley about the statue of George Washington. As we noted before, that depiction of Baphomet didn't exist until the 19th century. Other than that, Fairley actually gets this pretty much right, even if for the wrong reason. An official Smithsonian website explains why. So the transfer had nothing to do with the statue being modeled on Zeus. The real problem was that it was considered a joke. Fairley closes this part with reference to a couple of alleged pagan symbols. One is the bronze sun symbol beneath the dome of the Capitol. He doesn't explain what he thinks the problem with this is, so I can't really answer. A sun isn't a pagan symbol unless it is imbued with all the properties of one by someone who worships it. The other thing he notes is as follows. But Fairley doesn't even bother to ask, what's the purpose of those statues being there exactly? In the case he cites, it's part of a representation of war and peace, using Mars and Ceres. War and peace, of course, are the fundamental concerns of any government. Is there anything wrong with using Mars and Ceres to depict them? Not that I can see. But if you do see a problem, you'll have a lot more to deal with too, especially if you drive one of these, or eat any of this, or wear some of this, or, well, you get the picture. This one gets a quarter tank rating.